Signature Hall as we speak, Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, our distinguished Pandit, Pandit Sunesh Maharaj, members of our head table whom I would recognize in their absence, the Honorable Colm Imbert and the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis, ministers of government all, members of parliament and senators all, officers of the movement, Miss Joel Eulalie Williams, the matriarch of our great party, our own national award winner and local government representative, Councillor Mr. Terry Rondon, the executive and chairman of the Shogunas East constituency, who's hosting us here tonight, members of local government and councillors, all the men, all. And ladies and gentlemen, I must particularly recognize a visitor, a guest that we have in our PNM house tonight. I want to recognize Councillor Samuel Sanka. And for those members of the listening and viewing public, and even those seated here, Councillor Sanka has left the rising sun and he is here tonight. He is here tonight. I am pronouncing it. He is here tonight to see what the PNM has to offer. And let us do better than that and give the councillor a good PNM welcome. Members of the media all, and you Trinidad and Tobago, a pleasant good night. Ladies and gentlemen, I kindly ask you to stand as we pay our respect to Mother Trinidad and Tobago with our national anthem. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Ladies, brothers and sisters, I ask you to continue standing as we now turn to our opening prayers. It gives me great honor to call upon the young, brilliant teacher and Pandit, Pandit Sunesh Maharaj, to consecrate and bless tonight's proceedings.
Good night and Sitaram. Let us clasp our hands, we close our eyes, and for these few brief moments we offer prayer in recognition to the Almighty, to Him who ensures that all becomes possible. And as we pray, we ask for that blessing, that as we walk our chosen paths, as we fulfill what we are here to fulfill, that may that blessing be there with us to overcome whatever difficulties may stand in our way. And that as we move forward in our journey, that whatever decisions, whatever information that we present, that may it be for the best interests of the generations that are yet to come to bless our land. Hari Om Sri Ganeshaya Namaha Sri Saraswatyai Namaha Sri Guru Charan Kamalibhyo Namaha Pranamya Shirasa Devam Gauri Putram Vinayakam Bhaktavasam Smare Nityamayuhu Kamartha Siddhahi Pratamam Vakratundam Cha Ekadandam Dvitiyakam Trutiyam Krishna Pingaksham Gajavakram Chaturtakam Lambodaram Panchamam Tashashtamam Vikatamivacha Saptamam Vignarajendram Dhumravarnam Tatashtamam Navamam Bhalachandram Vadashamam Tu Vinayakam Ekadasham Ganapatim Dvadasham Tu Gajananam Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Let there be peace in our land. Let there be peace in our hearts and in our minds. Thank you.
Kindly have your seats. Panditji, by gracing us with your very presence and by giving us your blessings or darshan, you have reminded us how beautifully diverse our country is. We are indeed Trinidad and Tobago. We are indeed one people under God. And I believe that deserves a round of applause. Trinidad and Tobago, I am Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal, and I am humbled by the opportunity to chair tonight's public meeting. So, with reverence having been paid to the red, white, and black, and the Lord Almighty invited to oversee these deliberations, my PNM family, I believe it is fair to say we are ready to rumble. My PNM family, let me hear you roar. Shogunas East, you could do better than that. Let me hear you roar. Trinidad and Tobago, we continue our conversations with you tonight as we clarify, as we educate, as we report to you on what your government is doing and what your government intends to do. Since you and I last spoke, Trinidad and Tobago, we were at the heart of budget debates at the Parliament. And I ask you to listen to us with an open mind and heart as we spoke to you on why certain decisions were taken by your government. Tonight, Trinidad and Tobago, as we continue our conversation with you, whether you're at home, on your bed, driving in your car, watching us on TV or streaming online, I again ask you, Trinidad and Tobago, to pay careful attention to what is being said here tonight. This Trinidad and Tobago is the only platform you should believe anything from. This Trinidad and Tobago is a platform of truth that deserves a round of applause. This Trinidad and Tobago is a platform of integrity that deserves a round of applause. And I want us to stand as we recognize the arrival. And as we speak about truth and integrity, let us recognize the arrival of the man who represents truth and integrity, our political leader, Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley. Welcome, Prime Minister, to Shogunas East. We have been eagerly awaiting your arrival. So, Trinidad and Tobago, as I said, this is a platform of nation building. And so, you need to hear from us. So you will be equipped, to reject the lies, to reject the deceptions that is bombarding you on a daily basis by the opposition. Trinidad and Tobago, you see, when we at the PNM mount a platform like this, we do not take that opportunity for granted. We understand that the PNM, Trinidad and Tobago, that you are watching. We understand that you are listening. We understand that our nation is now healing from the ravages of a pandemic and world economic challenges. We understand that climate change is real and people are afraid and frustrated from the moment rain starts to fall. We understand that the family of victims of crime and victims of crime themselves are scared of what is happening in the country. So you know what, Trinidad and Tobago? Every word that comes out of our mouth as a PNM people, every word that comes out of our mouths are to give you hope. Every policy that comes out of our government, Trinidad and Tobago, is to show you our potential as a nation, from how far we have come and how far as a people we can go. Every strategy that comes from the People's National Movement, every strategy that comes out of your government, our government, is to renew your boundless faith in our destiny. While at the same time, Trinidad and Tobago, on this platform, we do not fool you about the reality and what is really happening in this country. We, Trinidad and Tobago, take responsibility for our words, and we recognize we could either use a platform like this to divide a wedge or to drive a wedge between our people and our races, or we can use a platform like this, a basis like this, to unite our people. So, Councillor Sanka, I say to you, welcome to the People's National Movement. Bring your family, bring your friends. This is a party that speaks about unity. This is a party for all people, and we welcome you again tonight. We will always be held at a higher standard, Trinidad and Tobago, because this is not a Monday night forum, my bad. So Trinidad and Tobago, as we get into our batting lineup tonight, it gives me great pleasure, it gives me absolute and great pleasure to welcome our first speaker. Our opening speaker, Trinidad and Tobago, is a powerhouse, a PNM woman, a brilliant woman, a beautiful woman, a classy woman, a woman with more than 30 years experience in government, a woman who currently devotes all her time to building her constituency of Aruka Maloney and her ministry of housing. A woman who mentors and is never too busy to give an advice to us, the younger and newer politicians in the PNM. Trinidad and Tobago, it gives me great honor to call to the political hustings the Member of Parliament for Aruka Maloney, the leader of government business in the House of Representatives, the Lady Vice Chair of the People's National Movement, the Minister of Housing, the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you very kindly, Renuka. The only thing you didn't say is that I'm the Lady Vice Chairman, unopposed. Esteemed political leader of the People's National Movement, the Honorable Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, Matriarch of the PNM, Mrs. Joan Yule Williams, Deputy Political Leader, members of the Executive of the People's National Movement, members of the Cabinet, members of Parliament, both the upper and lower houses, members of local government, ladies and gentlemen, members of the only true political party in Trinidad and Tobago, the People's National Movement, and member of the UNC, but I think he's stepping over gradually. Welcome, Councillor, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, We live in a country that is full of paradoxes. We live in a country of can and cannot. The UNC can cry racism. The PNM cannot call a spade a spade. The UNC will attack any female politician, president, anybody. And the PNM cannot say a word about the naked truth. The UNC steals with impunity. The UNC could drink up, link up, stink up, but the PNM cannot afford to mess up. Heavy is the crown on the head of our political leader, but our political leader wears it well, ladies and gentlemen. The PNM, whether in government or out of government, 66 years we have devoted ourselves to the service of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. 66 years of excellence. And every time you all give them an opportunity, they mash up the country and we have to come and fix it back. For them is rum, woman, man, goat, and song. And the PNM is always judged by a higher standard. We know that, we accept that, and we embrace that, and we do not run from that. But sometimes the latitude that is given to those on the other side is really astounding. But ladies and gentlemen, we understand our role. We understand why you keep coming back to the PNM. We understand that the PNM is the only party that truly loves Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, as I say that, I turn to the fact that under the PNM, we have consistently worked in the interest of all the people. So in the last budget, we have allocated the sum of $5 billion, I repeat, $5 billion to the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services for the most vulnerable in our society. The Ministry of Education has got the largest budget to ensure the education of our citizens from nursery to tertiary. And ladies and gentlemen, that has been our mantra, that has been our mandate. And we even do the same as we continue to ensure that the people of Trinidad and Tobago are served by this Keith Rowley-led administration. We in the PNM understand that apart from the mandate of education for all, one of our other mandates is the mandate of ensuring housing solutions for the most vulnerable. I tell you that every day we of the PNM are putting back the pieces together of the HDC, because under the last administration, they did everything in their power to move the HDC from its moorings, to move the Ministry of Housing from its moorings. And what are the moorings of the Ministry of Housing and HDC? The moorings are to provide housing and housing solutions and grants to those most in need. You will recall that they had moved the ceiling for housing under the HDC to $45,000, which meant that many persons who were in need of housing could not afford the houses. We have returned that figure to $25,000 as the ceiling. Perhaps, ladies and gentlemen, I should give you an example of how we are moving the Ministry of Housing and the HDC in particular. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand and take our responsibility seriously to ensure that we provide housing solutions for those of you who cannot face the private or the open market. And we have given an undertaking that this will be our movement as it relates to housing. Recently, in the budget, the Minister of Finance announced that there will be an injection of $1.5 billion into the HDC in order to provide three things. One, new housing construction. Two, to resume houses that had stalled. And three, to pay off contractors and those persons, service providers, whom we owe. We anticipate that this $1.5 million will be in the coffers of the HDC by the end of the year, the full amount. To date, we have received $500 million, and we have started to resume construction of the stalled projects. So where are these stalled projects, ladies and gentlemen? This $500 million will allow us to deliver these houses in Lisa's Gardens, Pro Village in Moruga, Edinburgh South, Carlton Place, Cypress Hills, Heron Court, Riverside North, Riverside South, Harmony Hall, Buenintento, Rail Springs, Mahogany Court, Trestrail, and Carlson Field. And still to come would be North Grove, that is now before the court, Pineapple Smithlands, Gomez Trace, South Key, Piccadilly Street, and for Chaguanas, apart from Lisa's Gardens and Edinburgh South. I am pleased to report to you tonight that we will resume the construction of what has been called the Edinburgh Towers. When these projects have been completed, ladies and gentlemen, we will house over 5,000 families. And I repeat that, we will house over 5,000 families. We understand that not everybody can afford a mortgage, and therefore, we have made the conscious decision to return the HDC to building units for rental. There have been many years that the HDC has not produced rental units, and so we have consciously determined that because there will be people who cannot afford a mortgage, we will return the HDC to its moorings of building houses specifically for rental. And I think that deserves a round of applause. So these rental units will be sited apart from Edinburgh Towers. There will be rental units in Armand Court in Morvan, in Beetham Gardens in Beetham, in Thomas Trace in the constituency of Aruka Maloney, in the area of Bonaire North, the citrus growers site in Laventille, and in areas in San Fernando. In Central, the projects that will allow over 400 families to rest easier are in Oasis Phase 5, Carlson Field, Edinburgh 500, Edinburgh South, Lisa's Gardens, Couva, Exchange, Couva, and Eden Gardens in Freeport. And even as we build, ladies and gentlemen, we have not forgotten our older HDC communities. And so, the HDC will be using the money that we'll be getting from this government-guaranteed loan to launch a refurbishment program. This program will give our rental units a facelift. So this program will be launched just in time for Christmas. And we'll be using small contractors to give a facelift for our older rental units. So this program will occur in the San Fernando area. This program will occur in the Aruka Maloney area, in the Laventille area, in the Morva area, in the Port of Spain South area, and in the Port of Spain North area, and all the areas where we have our older rental communities. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our intention to refurbish these units, and whilst we do this refurbishment, we are also employing people from the area and employing small contractors. Our good news is not limited to the HDC, and I'll talk a little more about the HDC as I converse with you. But our good news also spreads to other arms of the ministry. Some of you may know that the Ministry of Housing has several agencies attached to it. So apart from the HDC, where all of you think that the HDC is the Ministry of Housing, it is not. The HDC is just an agency of the Ministry of Housing. As a matter of fact, I am now being called the Minister of HDC, and my colleague, the Minister in the Ministry, is the Minister in the Ministry of HDC. The Ministry is the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. HDC is only a part of the Ministry's remit. So the HDC, and now I say in the HDC, the Ministry of Housing has under its remit the Land Settlement Agency. And over the last 3 months, the LSA has given out 37 starter homes, 75 certificates of comfort, 60 fully developed housing lots to former employees of state-owned Petrotrin, and 25 fully developed lots to other qualified citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that the person we call our political leader, the person we call our Prime Minister, is laser focused on ensuring that we care for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I repeat, laser focused. So in housing, he is very clear on what our policy must be and how we carry out our policy. In local government and rural development, the same thing. In education, the same thing, laser focus. In health, the same thing, laser focus. And I tell you that he is very clear on what the policy for the people of Trinidad and Tobago must be and how we must move as one in carrying out the policies in each of our ministries. And I am of the firm view that once we also remain laser focused, we will achieve those things that we have set ourselves as the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And as I talk about that, I must remind you that at the height of its success as an agency of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, the HDC produced 7,000 houses at various stages of construction per year. And I'm sure you all know who was the Minister of Housing at that time. It wasn't me. But I am now in a competition to ensure that I do better than a certain person. It's a contest, and I'm real competitive. So, next year I'll be saying, we produced 10,000 houses. And thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I repeat, at the height of its most successful time, the HDC had produced over 7,000 houses at various stages of construction each year. And our objective really is to get back to that kind of construction, to deliver that for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. As a responsible government, we have determined that in order for the HDC to produce at an optimal level, we have to restructure the HDC. And the process has been completed. So the HDC is now converted into a holding company with 3 very distinct subsidiaries. One company will manage the assets of the HDC, so all the housing assets that are on the ground. The second company will be responsible for maintaining the HDC's facilities, so that is especially the rental assets and so on, and the surroundings. And the third company will be solely responsible for construction. Our objective, therefore, is to ensure that these 3 companies will be laser focused on what they have to do. So there are no disparate elements. Each company has a mandate, and that is what they will be focused on, with the HDC as the holding company above these 3 companies. The HDC, therefore, will again anchor itself as the principal provider of safe and sustainable housing solutions to the lower and middle income citizens of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Over the last few months, ladies and gentlemen, we have made significant progress into reducing the backlog of applicants for housing. But this is very slow going because, as I've said before, the number of applicants is in the region of 190,000. And that number is almost impossible to reduce very quickly. But we are making every effort to ensure that we do what we have to do. Over the last few months, we have delivered 165 houses. We have 2 more key distribution ceremonies before the end of the year. And if I'm not mistaken, by that time, we will deliver almost 300 houses to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, you may recall that in 2010, there were a number of houses that had not been delivered. We had a number of houses on the ground, and yet we did not distribute those houses to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And the pretenders to the throne distributed the houses that we had built. I can tell you that Keith Christopher Rowley is not allowing that to happen. As soon as we build a house, we are distributing that house. And I repeat, as soon as we build a house, we are distributing the house so that citizens will get the houses once they have been completed. As I said, it is not just the HDC that comprises the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. In our other agencies, the Land Settlement Agency, our Program Monitoring, Coordinating and Evaluation Unit, and our East Port of Spain Agency, over 387 families have now benefited from either completed houses or starter homes. So the HDC, on the one hand, is producing houses, but the LSA, on the other hand, is also producing houses of a certain level. Over 60 persons who are Petrotrin employees have got their land that was promised. And in addition to that, we have developed a system of ensuring adequate and affordable homes, subsidies and preferential mortgage loans, grants to assist deserving persons to undertake basic repairs and improvements to their homes, and to assist those who are experiencing unavoidable emergencies as a result of disasters, either man-made or natural disasters. We are also providing security of land tenure for disadvantaged citizens through a program of squatter regularization. Ladies and gentlemen, in the fiscal year 2022 to 2023, we anticipate that the ministry will continue to provide home improvement grants to assist an estimated 1,333 families. That will be double the amount that we provided in fiscal 2021 to 2022. Under its Affordable Housing Subsidies Program, the ministry has therefore disbursed 509 subsidies to families who have met the very strict criteria for these subsidies. Of these subsidies, 194 were for home improvement and 312 were for home construction. Now, the home improvement subsidies are grants of $20,000. And I repeat, it's a grant. You don't have to pay it back. For the home construction, there's a grant of $50,000, a grant, $50,000 that this government is giving to qualified citizens. You don't have to pay it back. Over the years, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you some figures. Since the inception of the Home Improvement Grant Program in March 2004 to date, the government has delivered 16,959 grants totaling $254.4 million to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. In terms of housing, between the NHA and the HDC, the government has delivered over 55,000 houses to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And as a responsible government, we will continue to do what we have been elected to do, to ensure that the people who are in the lower and middle income can afford housing for themselves and their families. We see housing and land as the development of intergenerational wealth. And as a consequence of that, we will do what is necessary to ensure that the people who deserve it most do get the housing that they deserve and the grants that they deserve. The ministry, though, and the HDC is not just using the government simpliciter to do housing. We are also entering public-private partnerships. We have entered public-private partnerships with 6 companies to date for an estimated yield of 923 houses. Of that number, 287 have already been completed. The majority of these are located in Mount Hope and terrestrial lands in Dabadie. There are 636 more units to be developed in this arrangement in the not-too-distant future. But ladies and gentlemen, we have not only done this type of public-private partnership. What we have also done is started the Small and Medium Contractors Initiative. So we have developed a cadre of small and medium contractors who have been given between 4 and 10 houses to build. So the HDC and the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development is fulfilling the mandate of the government to develop new contractors. We have had a system of bringing in small and medium contractors, teaching them how to develop their companies, teaching them the proper skills, and enhancing their skills. And by that mechanism, ladies and gentlemen, we will have over 4,000 housing units being built by small and medium contractors. The construction will take place in areas such as Fairfield in Princestown, Roystonia Phase 2 in Couva, Edinburgh Gardens, and Eden Gardens. These will be the main areas for that small and medium contractor initiative, and we also have that taking place along the east-west corridor. Ladies and gentlemen, together with the other agencies that fall under the ambit of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, we gave you a promise that you will receive safe and affordable housing, and we are delivering on that promise. We gave you a promise and an undertaking that the wait for certificates of comfort will be reduced, and we are delivering on that promise. We promised to accelerate the construction of starter homes, and we are delivering on that promise. We promised to develop lots so that persons who are qualified can get those lots, and we are delivering on that promise. We promised an increased number of grants and subsidies to the most vulnerable, and we are delivering on that promise. And ladies and gentlemen, that is delivery, PNM style. But as you know, the more we deliver, the more those against us will try to undermine our efforts. So we're not surprised that their latest attempt surrounds a piece of state land at Todd Street in San Fernando. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to lay out the facts for you, because I saw the leader of the opposition beating up herself, saying she getting her lawyers ready because she's going to stop the construction and touch. If we construct in San Fernando West, it's because we vote a pardon. So what is that, ladies and gentlemen? The people of San Fernando mustn't get housing? What is that, ladies and gentlemen? People in Princestown, how come that is not voter pardon? People in Chaguanas, how come that is not voter pardon? People in Maloney and Aruca, how come they're not calling that voter pardon? It's only San Fernando West? Well, we are saying tonight that once the people of Trinidad and Tobago need affordable housing, we will construct in every part of Trinidad and Tobago. We will not be deterred. We will do what is right. And let me also ask, when they wanted to construct on Eddie Hart ground without going to town and country, without let or hindrance, there were people marching up and down saying, don't construct on Eddie Hart ground because it's a water table. Nah. Botiwari, as Minister of Planning and Development, went ahead and tried to construct on Eddie Hart ground. Ladies and gentlemen, the PNM is a law-abiding party. We are a law-abiding government. Not one of us has done anything to be before the courts. And ladies and gentlemen, we will do what we have to do for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So let me give you the facts as it surrounds this Todd Street development. By letter dated March 20th, 2022 to the Town and Country Planning Division, the HDC made an inquiry. Note what I have said. An inquiry as to the use of a parcel of land at Todd Street for multi-family residential development. This parcel of land, ladies and gentlemen, is comprised of 10 hectares. We were asking about 1 hectare, one of the 10 hectares. On the 7th of April 2022, the Town and Country Planning Division indicated the following. The site located in the area is allocated for urban development. 2, the site forms part of a larger parcel allocated as a school site. 3, residential use is not permitted. However, any further request must be accompanied by correspondence from the Ministry of Education indicating no objection to the change of use of the portion of land from a school site to residential use. What is somewhat confusing is that the Town and Country Planning Division said the site is located in an area allocated for urban development. Based on that, and the fact that in its closing paragraph, the Director of Town and Country Planning said, any further request must be accompanied by correspondence from the Ministry of Education indicating no objection to the change of use of the portion of land from school to residential. The HDC is not crazy. So the HDC corresponded with the Minister of Education, and by letter dated March 23rd, 2022, the Minister of Education said, in response to our request by the HDC, dated March 8th, 2022, the Minister of Education indicated that there was no objection to the portion of land being used for residential development. Remember, it's a 10-hectare parcel of land. Remember that the HDC is asking for the use of 1 hectare. Now, having received the information from Town and Country, having received the no objection that was requested by Town and Country from the Minister of Education, the HDC on May the 6th submitted an application for outline planning permission to the Town and Country Planning Development Division to excise 1 hectare from the 10 hectares for use for residential development. Ladies and gentlemen, that application is pending. Ladies and gentlemen, you all understand what I'm saying? We have done what is the right thing. We wrote to Town and Country. They told us what would be necessary if we wanted to excise the 1 hectare. We wrote to the Minister of Education and we got the non-objection. What is now before Town and Country is an application for outline planning approval. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how a proper government operates its business. So when they're telling you, we're getting lawyers, we are only at the outline planning approval stage. We haven't moved a blade of grass. We haven't constructed 1 thing on that land. In addition to that, the HDC also asked the Ministry of Education if they would give permission for the HDC to go onto the land to do geotechnical surveying so that they can understand what kind of soil they're dealing with. All of that is very preparatory. All of that is what you call first stage work. We are still awaiting feedback from the Ministry of Planning and Development, from the Town and Country Planning Division. So you could tell me why Kamala feel that we will just go willy-nilly. Kamala, we are not like you all. We follow the law. We continue to follow the law. When anybody knocking on Dr. Rowley's door is not police. We follow the law. So, ladies and gentlemen, the application is pending, and we will keep you updated as to how this matter progresses. But this is the season for all kind of talk, and you know they always have their forum, so they have to say anything that comes to their mind. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to just get off for 1 minute on the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Because as you know, we are in the season of internal elections. Some people are unopposed, but not everybody is unopposed. So, I'm not showing off, but facts is facts. Some people opposed, right? So I have to say a little something. So I just want to say, I'm not being paid for this, although I would like to be. But I just want to say a few words. I want to know, as soon as you mention election, internal election, all kind of people come out and decide that they want to fight down the political leader. No way. Imagine. I wondering, somebody who we didn't see for years. I wonder if she in this meeting. Okay, before I get into it a little bit, I'm just making a house announcement. there's an M? Hey, you reach? TCM 5593. It's a black panel van. We need you to move, please. TCM 5593. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, when last you all saw Karen in a PNM meeting? When last you all saw Karen in a party group meeting? When last you all saw Karen not bad talking the PNM? All Karen has been doing is bad talking every single thing that the PNM has been doing. I can't understand. And now Karen wants to run the party. Karen never did one thing for this party since she left. I'm not saying she's not a member, but all these years when our political leader has been toiling, has been making sure that the party is resilient, has been making sure that this is the party of choice. Karen has been nowhere in sight. Karen is nowhere in sight. So I want to ask Karen just a few questions. Karen, how you could sit down on the riverbank and be bad talking the river? Every time you see Karen, she bad talking us. I don't even think Karen have a red top. I can't understand, Karen, when you withdrew the money, you all feel I should answer that question? She was in curlers, a hearing. She was in curlers and run down to Clicquot and withdraw her money. And the sister and the mother money. And leave all the rest of everybody with their hands in the air wailing. And Karen, you want to lead the PNM? Karen, I don't think I should ask Karen any more questions. I really feel hurt that Karen feels she could just come and feel she could lead the PNM. Well, let us tell Karen tonight, we have a political leader. We have a political leader, a man in which we are extremely proud. A man who has taken us from one hurdle to the next without faltering. Where was Karen during the lockdown? Not a cent. I'm sure Karen didn't give a hamper. And Karen could afford a hamper. Eh? I'm not saying. Where was Karen when we needed voices to speak in favor of the policies of the PNM? Madam, I'm not going down that road. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a political leader who has proven his mettle. This is a man who has consistently grown over the years as a political leader and as a prime minister. He has not faltered. He has not brought us to shame at any occasion. He, in fact, has made us proud. He has continued to develop our party to the extent where we have moved from delegate voting to voting one man, one vote. He has developed our party to the extent where parties in the region look to us for guidance. He has built on the work of Dr. Eric Williams. He has furthered the work of George Michael Chambers. He has enhanced the work of Patrick Augustus Mervyn Manning. And ladies and gentlemen, without a shadow of a doubt, there is no one who can put their feet in the shoes of Keith Christopher Rowley. Ladies and gentlemen, as for me and my household, look my household there, and Fritz, we are voting for Keith Christopher Rowley. And ladies and gentlemen, I say to you, do not let a pretender try to think that she could even match with our political leader. She cannot, she will not, she dare not. Because all she has done is bring us into disrepute. And I say that without even flinching. I say to you tonight, Keith Rowley must continue to be our political leader. He is the true political leader of whom we are very proud. And I say to you tonight, if you know what's good for you, vote solidly for Keith Christopher Rowley. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. As I say to you, great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. And we shall prevail. Thank you. God bless you.
Father, you bless me. Nothing can stress me. I was born in so much love. Thank you, mommy. I stay so humble and giving.
So my PNM family, that's what we call fire. More fire, and the Honorable Minister deserves another round of applause. Minister, I want to thank you I want to thank you on behalf of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago for speaking the truth, reporting to this country on what your ministry has been doing. Minister, I also want to use this opportunity to recognize and say thank you to your minister in the ministry who I know has been working with you to bring forward change in that ministry. So let's give our both ministers who have been leading the charge, flying the PNM flag high in that ministry. Let's give them a round of applause. Before we continue with tonight's proceedings, it will be remiss of me if we do not recognize Ms. Janelle Jo Ryan. I understand Ms. Janelle Jo Ryan is the only PNM councillor in this particular district. Ms. Janelle Jo Ryan, stand. We have to salute you. And we need to recognize our councillor because she alone stands in the gap, flying the PNM flag. She's a young, brilliant woman, and let's give her that support. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand information has come to me that Mr. Abdullah, the chairman of the Scrap Iron Dealers Association, is also here tonight to hear what the People's National Movement has to offer. Let us also give him a PNM welcome. Mr. Sanka, I turn to you again. As I said, the PNM is a place for everyone. This is the true party that represents every citizen of this country. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us continue along our batting order. You know, in law, under the Constitution and the provisions of the Exchequer and Audit Act, the Minister of Finance, it is said, is responsible for the management of the consolidated fund and the supervision, control, and direction of all matters relating to financial affairs of the state. But what the Constitution and the Exchequer and Audit Act did not say was that other than a political leader, the Minister of Finance is a person who unfortunately has to take the most amount of licks in a government. And the Constitution also did not say that notwithstanding the licks, he has to be strong. The Minister of Finance has to be focused, prudent, and have the belly to make decisions that will not cripple our economy and not cripple our society. Trinidad and Tobago, against that backdrop, I want to introduce our next speaker, a man who has never had an easy ride, a man who has taken so much licks but with immense grace, and he deserves a round of applause for that. A man who plans for the future generations of Trinidad and Tobago. And personally, Trinidad and Tobago, as a mother of a soon-to-be 14-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, I say thank you, Minister. Thank you to our next speaker for handling Trinidad and Tobago's finances in the way that I know my children, your children, our children can look forward to a bright future. Brothers and sisters, to that end, it gives me great honor to welcome to the political hustings to report to you the MP for Digo-Martin Northeast and the chairman of the People's National Movement, the Minister of Finance, the Honorable, before I give the Honorable Minister his welcome, his much-deserved welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling again on the driver of TCM 5593, the black panel van. I understand that the police needs you to move because you are blocking an emergency exit. So we're calling once again upon the driver of PCM 5593, black panel van. We're asking you to attend to your vehicle immediately. So, Minister, again, brothers and sisters, in a true PNM style, in a true Shogunazi style, let's put our hands together and welcome to the political hustings, the Honorable Mr. Colm Imbert.
Trials and testings does come before blessings, but we have to be patient, yeah. Weeping and mourning in the night, but joy in the morning, but we just have to endure. You see, God, the way no night come. So you don't really need to lie down. Them say what was around comes right back around.
Good evening, everyone. Political leader of the People's National Movement and Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, my cabinet colleagues too numerous to mention, other members of the executive of the People's National Movement, members of the head table, members from this particular part of Trinidad, Chaguanas, local government representatives, members of the party, friends, well-wishers, supporters. That car is not mine, eh? I walked from the Southern Main Road to here. I didn't mind the exercise, but we have to do something about that traffic. That was something else. And before I get into my presentation, I just want to say, Camille, guys are no contest, you know. You want to get on so. The licks will be 99-1 now. After that, instead of 98-1. So, oh gosh, man. But anyway, I'm here tonight to tell you some good news that is annoying the opposition, is frightening the opposition, and I think fright is probably the correct description for it, and is sending our protagonists, the people who are against us, the naysayers, the people who write in the newspapers, who are on the radio, on the television, sending them into confusion. In fact, to use the local parlance, they tizzik. Just a month ago, I presented the national budget, the 7th budget that this PNM administration, the Rowley administration, has presented. And in that budget, I was able to give some fairly good news. I was able to tell the population that the outturn, the financial outturn or fiscal outturn as it is called, for the financial year 2022, which ended on September 30th, was far better than we originally expected. In fact, at that time, based on the information available to the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance, we believed that we had earned revenue that was about $8.3 billion more than we expected at the beginning of the year. So when we started out the year, we thought that we would earn about $43.3 billion. When I presented a budget, the figures given to me at that time were that instead of $43.3 billion in revenue, we had in fact earned $51.6 billion in revenue, $8.3 billion more. But that did not have the actual revenue figures for September. Now, the way the country works, corporations pay their taxes at the end of every 3 months. So they pay taxes at the end of December, at the end of March, at the end of June, and at the end of September. So when we delivered the budget on the 26th of September, we only had estimates of what we would get at the end of that month. I'm very pleased to tell you that the outturn was even better. So instead of collecting $51.6 billion, we actually collected $54.2 billion. So that the difference between our original estimate of 43.3 and what we actually collected at 54.2 was almost $11 billion. $11 billion more. And that income came in many different ways. All I did was announce that. I got the September 30 figures a week or so ago. I thought the population should know that we almost balanced the budget in 2022. First time that we had done this since 2008. So it was the lowest deficit, almost a balanced budget. Lowest for 14 years. The last time we had that kind of financial performance was in 2008. Since 2008, because all sorts of things happened, In 2008, we had a collapse of oil prices. PNM was in government then, and we had to borrow. We had to go into a deficit budget. We had posted a surplus the year before, and since then, we have been running budget deficits. A budget deficit occurs when you spend more than you earn. A balanced budget occurs when you spend the same amount of money that you earn. And all of you who run households know that you need to run a balanced budget. In fact, you need to run a surplus, because when you run a surplus, then you can save, and you always need savings for future. So when I published this information that our revenue collection was almost $11 billion more than we expected, the opposition went crazy. One of them say I was boasting. I don't understand. When things are bad, what they say, are crying. So when things are good, are boasting. I just stating the facts, because that's what we do in PNM. And by the way, Camille, all those houses you want to build, it is going to be facilitated by this financial performance. Because if I break down the numbers, we expected to get about $5.5 billion from oil companies. We got 11.4. But the real interesting change is we expected to get 6.5 billion from the rest of the economy. That is not oil and gas. And we got 11.4 there as well. So that the Trinidad and Tobago economy is doing extremely well. It is not just oil and gas. It is the non-oil sector. And we're seeing improvement in virtually every area in the non-oil sector. Now, what this allows us to do, when we came into government in 2015, one of those famous meetings I had with the former governor of the central bank, where he told me that if I don't put money into the government's bank account at the central bank, he will turn off the tap. I always remember that. He's going to turn off the tap. I say, what tap? The water? He said, no. If you don't put money, I'll turn off the financial tap. And you only have enough money to run the country for about 3 days. I asked him, why? He said, because the overdraft is maxed out. Now, the government has an overdraft, like most corporations have overdrafts, and you use your overdraft for temporary advances. It's not supposed to be maxed out. You use it when you have a cash flow issue. So you dip into your overdraft, you get some cash, you pay your bills, and then when your money comes in, your income comes in, you lower your overdraft. But that's not what happened. The past government took the overdraft right up to 100%. So that's what he meant. He said your overdraft maxed out. All right, so you had to run quick, borrow money here, borrow money there, and we scraped through September 2015. But after that, we began to face all kind of hardship. They were lucky. They had oil prices of $95 throughout their whole tour, from 2010 to 2015. $95 right through. Gas price, $5, $6, $7. That's what they had. I'm talking about natural gas. When we came in, the oil price had started to drop. It had dropped from 100 in 2014 down to $40 when I was reading the 2016 budget, 2015-2016 budget. And within 4 months, it had dropped to $25. So we had to struggle. We had this overdraft. We had to keep watching it every day, look at it. You get some money. It dropped to 75%. You had to pay salaries. It gone back up to 95%. And we have spent the last 7 years in the Ministry of Finance watching that overdraft. And because it was maxed out, there were a lot of things we could not do. We had to focus on making sure people remain in jobs. So we had to make sure we pay public servants' salaries every month for the last 7 years. That's what we had to do. We had to make sure that elderly people got their pension, their senior citizen pension, every month. So we had to focus on things like that. Then the last government had borrowed a lot of money. We had to borrow too. So every month you have to pay your debt servicing. You can't default. So every month, salaries and wages, social grants, senior citizens pension, disability, public assistance, food card, etc. You have to pay that. And there was very little left over. So we had to squeeze that whole 7 years watching that overdraft. Sometimes you reach 100%. Sometimes you had to breaks. I could tell you I looked at the overdraft before I came here tonight. It's 39%. 39%. And when the overdraft is 39%, it means there are things that we can do. The other thing that we have been able to achieve, COVID came out of nowhere. If you look at all the financial indicators between 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, things were getting better and better and better up to 2019. Then COVID comes and hits us in 2020, and well, that was another struggle in itself. But of course, we are PNM. We found a way to deal with it. We used the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. We got money from international banks, and the whole cabinet worked together, and we came up with a program to help those who were most in need during that COVID period. But it was a struggle, a serious struggle. And we had to borrow. So we had to borrow 5 billion, 6 billion, 10 billion, 15 billion in 1 year. In one of those COVID years, we had to borrow $17 billion. $17 billion. That's a huge number. That is 1/3 of your expenditure you have to borrow. It caused a particular ratio that the international agencies look at to go up. It's called our debt to GDP ratio. Now, your GDP is the value of all the goods and services produced in the government, in the country. It is not just the government that produces income in the country. The private sector does as well. So your gross domestic product, your GDP, is the value of everything produced in the country, whether it's produced by the government or whether it's produced by the private sector. And you have to take your debt, your total debt, and divide it by your GDP. And you get your debt to GDP ratio. The international agencies look at that very closely. Once your debt to GDP ratio starts to go 80%, 90%, 95%, you're in big, big trouble. We have our Caribbean brothers and sisters. Some of them had no choice. Their economies were devastated. Jamaica, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, their debt to GDP ratio, St. Kitts, went up all 150%, 180%. We found ourselves with a debt to GDP ratio of almost 90%. And that was in the danger zone. And when you get that high, you can't borrow. You can't borrow to finance your capital development program. You can't borrow to finance your construction program. For example, all those thousands of houses that Camille spoke about, which I will be holding you personally responsible to build all of them. Don't just come and call numbers here because you're going to get the money. So one of the good things that has happened to us because the economy has done so well, our GDP has moved from 140 billion in 2020 to 190 billion in 2022. We have an increase in our GDP of $50 billion in just 2 years. I don't think there's any other country in the world that has had that kind of increase. And since our GDP has increased that much, by $50 billion in 2 years, it means our debt to GDP ratio has gone down. It used to be 90, it's now 70, and it's continuing to go down. And we haven't borrowed any money as central government since December of 2021. We haven't borrowed any money. We borrowed money for some of the state enterprises, and we are most certainly going to do that. We are providing the Ministry of Housing with $1.5 billion in cash between now and December. The ministry has already received $500 million. And that's the kind of money that we need in this country to build houses. Houses are not cheap. You need a lot of money. And I give you the assurance tonight, Camille, that you are going to get that $1.5 billion. You can get your housing program going. You can put people in jobs. You can give out houses. As you said, Dr. Rowley is not going to make the mistake that others made to have thousands of houses half built, three-quarter built, finished, lying down, and not distributed. I'm certain you're not going to make that error. But I want to explain what this means for you. Not only can we finance housing construction, we can finance road construction, we can finance road repairs, road rehabilitation, and we can also finance community projects. Because one of the areas that we as a government have struggled with for the last 5 years is your small community project, your footpath, your retaining wall, the drain outside your house. We have struggled with that. And we now have the financial capability to fund the state enterprises, to give them the funds that they need in order to get all of these things done. Because as Dr. Rowley has made the point, that in COVID 2020 and 2021, it was all about saving lives. It was life and death. You know, when he said that, the opposition get vexed, but it was true. We had to focus on the Ministry of Health. We had to make sure that ministry was funded, and we had to make sure that people survived COVID. But now that COVID is on the decline, now that the economy is almost fully open, we can start now to focus on other areas. So the Ministry of Finance has already given the new secondary roads company $100 million, Faris. Start doing some work. And we have allocated a further $100 million to that company. It's in the budget, so you have another $100 million. So we expect to see the secondary roads company and the Ministry of Rural Development doing its job very, very soon. We also just raised $250 million for the Ministry of Works and Transport for its PURE, which is Program for Upgrading Roads Efficiency. It's a program started by the PNM. I think Arnold Piggott was the minister then in 2002. And that too is designed to deal with road upgrade, road repair, landslip repair. So we have put the Ministry of Works in cash. The Minister of Works has no excuse now. And because we have what is called now fiscal space, because our debt to GDP ratio is now down at an acceptable level, we can borrow to finance state enterprise work, because that's where we get the most efficiency. We also can use our own cash flow. Let me explain what a 39% overdraft means. It means we have available to us immediately $6 billion in cash if an emergency arises. So we can now send money out into the ministries, because we have a lot of suppliers and contractors. They've been very patient. They've been bearing with us for the last 7 years. The persons who provide us with accommodation, with security services, with janitorial services, with basic supplies, contractors who do construction projects. We now have the fiscal space to deal with all of this. Now, that's why the opposition is scared of us. That's why you hear them screaming and saying it has nothing to do with this PNM government. It's the Ukraine war. I say poppycock to that. That had nothing to do with the Ukraine war. And I'll explain why. When they were in government, they had oil production of 101,000 barrels a day. That was their oil production. When they got into office in May of 2010, oil production was over 100,000 barrels a day. Gas production, when they got into office, was 4.4 billion cubic feet per day. When they handed back the government to us, or we take it back from them, oil production had dropped from 101,000 barrels a day to 75,000 barrels a day. They managed to reduce oil production by 25%, by 25,000 barrels. And gas production, natural gas production, had dropped from 4.4 billion cubic feet a day to 3.4 billion cubic feet a day. That's what they hand to us. And yet with all that, we have gas production up to 2.9 billion cubic feet a day, and we have stabilized oil production at 60,000 barrels a day. So we are running this country with gas production of 2.8, 2.9 billion cubic feet of gas per day, 60,000 barrels of oil per day, and we're earning almost the same amount of revenue that they did with 100,000 barrels a day and 4.4 billion cubic feet. What happened there? They were mismanaging the country. We changed the tax system when we came in. We know what we are doing. We reorganized the oil and gas tax system, and that is how, with much lower oil production, much lower gas production, and similar prices that they had, we are earning almost the same amount of revenue as them. That is management, PNM style. And you see, they understand that once we are able to improve production, because we're working hard at it, the whole government working hard at it, once we are able to improve oil production and gas production, once the prices remain at elevated levels, this PNM government can take the foot off the brakes and now put the foot on the gas, and we can assist the most poor and vulnerable people in our society. And that is what is scaring them. That is what is scaring them. That is what they're watching. Because that is the only thing they could say about this PNM government as far as I am concerned. The only thing they could say is that things are hard. Well, things are not going to be so hard in the very, very near future. And I just want to give some idea of what we did in the budget, because the budget debate, as usual, the contributions from the opposition were pathetic as usual. So the country does not know the measures that we introduced in the budget. So I'd just like to read out some of them that persons may not have understood. We have increased the personal income tax allowance effective. It will be effective from the 1st of January 2023. In fact, I'm going to Parliament on Friday. The government is going to Parliament, and we're going to legislate this into law so that come 1st of January 2023, anybody who is earning $7,500 per month or less will pay no tax. Now, what was it when we came in? When we came into office in 2015, the limit was $5,000 a month. And we have systematically increased that, $5,000 to $6,000 to $7,000, now $7,500 a month. No tax, no tax. So we've in fact reduced taxes. Because if somebody's earning $7,500, their tax rate is 0 under this PNM administration. One of the other things we've done, and it needs to be spoken about, we're introducing a program called School to Work Apprenticeship Allowance. And what that does is that if companies hire persons aged 16 to 25, people just coming out of the school system, for short-term apprenticeship, they can claim as a tax deduction 150% of the amount of money they pay those people. So if a business is paying an apprentice, let's say $5,000 a month, they can claim back $7,500 a month as a tax deduction, as an expense for hiring that person. And we expect that a number of companies are going to take advantage of this. And we're going to have far more of our young people who are coming straight out of school, going straight into the private sector, and getting an opportunity to get a long-term, sustainable, meaningful, well-paid job. That is in the budget of 2022. We also made a change to GATE, and we need to talk about it. Because things were bad, because revenue was low, because oil price was low, because we were struggling, we had to make adjustments to GATE. Now, GATE is a PNM program. It's not a UNC program, it's a PNM program. It's ours. We came up with GATE in 2004. And we made tertiary education, university education, free for everybody in Trinidad and Tobago in 2004. Before that, you had to pay. They had some jokey thing called dollar for dollar, but you had to have the first dollar to get the second dollar. If you're a scrunter, you can't access dollar for dollar. So what we decided, we will make it free. But the numbers of people that got involved in GATE was tremendous. The expenditure ballooned up from 100 million to 200 million, 300, 400, 500, 600 million. Because things were so tight, we couldn't afford to allow everybody to access GATE. So we made some adjustments. We made adjustments to your age. If you're above a certain age, you're not eligible for GATE. We limited people to one program, because what was happening, people were going from program to program to program. So somebody doing 6 and 7 degrees, what are you doing that for? You don't need 7 degrees. So one of the adjustments we had to make, unfortunately, was people who did something called an associate degree. It's an intermediate degree, or intermediate program. You do a diploma, you do an associate degree. People who did that, they were limited to one bite at the cherry. So unfortunately, and this affected a lot of people at the lower end of the income scale. Unfortunately, that affected a number of persons who were not able to enroll in a bachelor's degree program. They didn't have the money, they didn't have the time, they had to go and work part-time and so on. So they were only able to do an associate degree or a diploma. They unfortunately got shut out of the system. So one of the things we did in this budget, and it's going to cost the government at least $50 million a year, but we think that is money well spent. We have removed that restriction. So all these young people now can now move on. You do your diploma, you do your associate degree, you can now go on and do a bachelor's degree. And we think that is $50 million well spent. So what are we going to do with the extra money that we have? I think the answer is obvious. We're going to spend it creating jobs in the first instance. Our construction program for this year, or capital program, it's called a public sector investment program. It has many different names. In 2022, we spent, the government as a whole, spent $3.5 billion on its capital development construction program, public sector program. We have put into this year's budget $6.2 billion for construction and capital development. 6.2. And I can say now, if the revenue continues to improve as we are seeing it, I am sure when we do the mid-year review, we can accelerate and we can put even more into construction programs. Because that's the fastest way to create jobs. So that's one of the things we're going to do with this extra money that we have received. Another thing, we have to look very closely at helping the poor and vulnerable. I don't have an hour here to talk tonight, so I simply have to say that we are going to target, as a government, going to target those who are most in need and reach out to them and help them as best we can. We're not going to focus on make-work programs. We need to give people permanent, long-term, sustainable jobs. So that is what that extra money is going to be spent on. So I thought it was important I come to you tonight and explain what's going on. After 7 years, we get in an ease up. After 7 years of hardship, we can now spend some money. We can now improve the standard of living of our people. We can now help those most in need. And that is what this PNM government intends to do over the next 2.5 years. So thank you very much for having me. And of course, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and it shall prevail. And Dr. Rowley shall prevail too.
But we have to be patient, yeah. Weeping and mourning in the night, but joy in the morning. But we just have to enjoy.
Honorable Minister, I will borrow from some very profound words that you just shared with us. We are the PNM, and we found a way to deal with it. And that is so profound, because that is what we do at the People's National Movement. Irrespective of what challenge comes our way, we find a way and we deal with it. Let us give ourselves a round of applause. I know it has been said that the alternative to the PNM is what? Chaos and confusion. So to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, know what you're doing when that time comes for you to vote. Understand that the People's National Movement will always be the best choice of governance in this country. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that deserves recognition. Now, I have a confession. I sit on the Election Supervisory Committee, and therefore I am staying out of the business of candidates in this election. But I understand that today we are gathered here, and there are multiple candidates who are present, who are offering themselves as officers to lead our movement forward. I will not identify by name, and I believe I'm legally entitled to suggest to the party. It is to every single member. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but it is my right that I can tell you, come out in your numbers and exercise your democratic right when the time comes for us to vote. So I'm asking every single candidate who's offering themselves to serve in this party, this is your opportunity to stand so our membership can see who you are, can see who our future leaders are. And let us all, as they stand, let us all give them a round of applause. Every single candidate who's offering themselves to lead our great party, let us recognize them. I understand. I think that is Senator Lizama Leasing and our General Secretary unopposed. So let us give them a round of applause. And this is what we want. This is what democracy is in the People's National Movement. That we give every single member an opportunity to offer themselves to serve. Ladies and gentlemen, to that end, oh, and of course, our beautiful, unopposed Lady Vice Chair. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share a little story with you all as we move to our last speaker. I remember personally that the day before my very first court appearance, I was feeling sick to my stomach because I was petrified of public speaking, believe it or not. And I was prepared. I understood my brief inside out, but there was this fear that I could not get rid of. And a very, very close friend of mine said to me something that became my mantra after that day. He said, when you kneel before God, you could stand before any man. When you kneel before God, you can stand before any man. And I will tell you why I remember that in preparation for tonight. Because that saying reminds me of our next speaker. That saying is why I know our next speaker can stand against any man, any woman, and even Sukunya. And so, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker, when our next speaker recently celebrated his birthday, I, in a public post, stated that as a Hindu and a practicing Hindu, I knew it was by no coincidence that his birthday this year fell on Diwali Day, and I will tell you why. His leadership, brothers and sisters, his leadership, Trinidad and Tobago, is that light which illuminated our darkest nights and our darkest days as a nation. His leadership, Trinidad and Tobago, is what brought us together to be able to gather together as one people under God. His leadership brought us to where we can gather and we can roam without a mask. His leadership, brothers and sisters of Trinidad and Tobago, will even lead us through the crime situation that this country is currently facing. Trinidad and Tobago people, all of our people gathered here today, the next speaker, he's a man who stands on integrity. He's a man who stands on commitment, experience, and above all, truth. A father, a grandfather, a husband, our leader phenomenal, the leader phenomenal, the only choice for the governance in this country, the one and only and the right choice for governance in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great honor. I am ecstatic to welcome to the hustings Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley.
Somebody touch me, somebody touch me, somebody touch my soul. Somebody pray to me, Jesus. Somebody touch my soul. Somebody touch me, somebody touch me, somebody touch my soul. While I was praying, pray to me, Jesus. Somebody touch my soul.
sweet, I can't complain. The only constant is the change, and we go touch the road again. So as long as you call my name, then I will answer. I'm a happy camper, and love is my sponsor. Oh, and as long as I'm man of life, then I will dance up. But I feel no anger, I'm smiling with me hands up.
Thank you very much, the energetic Senator Renuka, representing the PNM in Chaguanas. Permit me to acknowledge once again Deputy Political Leader June Yule Williams and other party officers. And permit me to acknowledge especially those officers who are in post and are in fact expecting to continue. And the other group I'd like to acknowledge all the people of the PNM membership who saw it fit to offer themselves to serve. That's a good thing, and we welcome it. Because you, the party membership, you will receive them with open arms, and you will pick them one by one with 2 fingers, because you will choose from the offering who would take us forward in 2022 on to the next hurdle and the next hurdle and so on. So ladies and gentlemen, this is an interesting time for the PNM, but it's also a very interesting time for the country. And tonight, I've heard about birthdays. I simply want to admit that I've had a birthday recently, and I'm particularly happy that the birthday fell on the 24th of October, because that day is called United Nations Day. But this year, it was Diwali. And I can say tonight, I'm 73 years old. That seemed to have bothered some people, but you would have no idea how happy I am that I've made it to 73. And I wish all of you will one day, those of you who haven't made it yet, would say that, because I am particularly happy and proud to have conducted myself in the light of the good Lord, to have enjoyed the 70 and even more. I was in Tobago by planning, because since May, I planned to be in Tobago for the last few days of October, expecting that we'll get the budget out of the way. You would have heard me say this year we'll try to have an earlier budget. We did come a little earlier than normal, and once the budget was out of the way, I decided to spend a few days with my family, friends, and associates in Tobago. That seemed to have bothered some people. I've heard the most idiotic statement from a leader in Trinidad and Tobago, claiming that because I was in Tobago, I was missing in action. Well, let me tell the opposition leader, in case she doesn't remember, the name of this country is Trinidad and Tobago. And the office I hold is Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And whether I am in San Fernando, Sangre Grande, Chaguanas, or Scarborough, I am the Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago. And I particularly enjoyed being in Tobago because I'm not the only one who was happy that I was celebrating my 73rd year. My children, my nieces and nephews from abroad, many of them traveled all the way from California to be there with me, and I make no apology for that. I encourage you to be with your family. And I wonder why that should bother some people. You have to be a kind of, what do you say? Yeah, well, it's not a dwell, but Let me just tell you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that the cabinet functioned smoothly last Thursday from my office in Tobago. We didn't miss a beat. And I was engaged in Tobago as Prime Minister. I opened the finest bank in Trinidad and Tobago in Lowlands Tobago, the new FCB Bank in Tobago. If you are banking in FCB, our bank, brand new branch in Tobago, modern technology. Where are we going? Digital. You should see that. Tobagoans are now ahead of us in banking. And of course, I spent one Saturday celebrating with the Seventh-day Adventists, a church in which I was raised in my formative years, celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Mason Hall Seventh-day Adventist Church. Why that should bother some people, I don't know. But it seems to have bothered a lot of people. Not a lot, but a few of the crazies. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe I should say something about myself, because I have been identified as a candidate. I've heard about our internal elections, and I know that you have to choose yourself. But on reflection, for those of you who don't know me, I want to remind you who know me that I've been around for a while. And if that disqualifies me, then I'm well disqualified. And if it qualifies me, then I'm well qualified. Because today I'd spent a few moments doing some arithmetic. And I saw that I spent 4 years in this country as an opposition senator. Proud to be among the first voices of the PNM that ever spoke in opposition in the Senate under the leadership of Patrick Manning, after we were defeated 33-3. But subsequent to that, notwithstanding those who saw around the corner that at 33-3 the PNM would never come back, one said at best 20 years, but within 5 years you were back in office. And I've served 11 years as a minister of government in this country. I've served 15 years in opposition, 5 of which I've served as the opposition leader. And I've served 7 years as Prime Minister. And all I will ask Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar is for a little bit of respect. I do get that from Michaela Pandey, a young lady I like very much. From the very first day I met her in the presence of her father, who introduced her to me in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, even if we're joking around and meet, she always calls me sir. And that reminds me of how people used to be brought up long ago. You respected your elders. You didn't have to be in love with them, but you had to respect them. The leader of the opposition must learn to respect people in this country. And all I will say to her and her friends tonight, if you can't learn to respect your elders, you'll be taught to respect your betters. I've spent, ladies and gentlemen, a number of years as a cabinet member in Trinidad and Tobago. And you might believe that maybe I should be tired. Maybe I am. But I'm offering myself to the PNM to continue for a little longer, because these are difficult times and they require that the job be completed. Before I left Tobago, I called up my staff and I arranged to meet with all the people, men and women, all the leaders in the various divisions of the police service, to meet them yesterday. I made that arrangement last week. A National Security Council meeting first took place all of yesterday morning from 10 o'clock until after 12. And then in all afternoon until 7 o'clock, I met with the people who are responsible for enforcing the law in this country and for protecting us from the criminal element. And the reason why I scheduled that meeting is because I knew that when that time would have come, and we as a people would have had to face the fact, and I knew that that particular fact would have been highlighted, that we in our society of 1.4 million people have experienced in the last 10 months 500 murders. I knew it would weigh heavy on the shoulder and the minds of those people whose job it is to have prevented us and who have done their best according to them. But the circumstances are such that the reality is that this year, 500 people, I think the figure is now at 509 people have been murdered in Trinidad and Tobago. Most violently using firearms. But not just firearms. A little while ago, I just received information that 2 people have been chopped. I'm not sure how badly they've been chopped, but they're still trying to kill people. The opposition would have you believe that if they were in office, they will know about that and they'll be able to prevent it. The minds of the people who do those things, I am not aware yet that I could look at this audience and say, you plan to go and kill somebody. You intend to do it next week, and you will do it tonight. I don't know that. What we do know is that the law is being enforced, and we've done significant, reasonable things to try and protect ourselves from the criminal element. But the criminal element will not be restrained easily. So the job is a job that we'll continue to have to do. And I met with those people yesterday largely to encourage them to not give up the fight against the criminal element and to let them know that the government of Trinidad and Tobago stands foursquare behind them. And you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, traumatized as we are in this crisis, that you stand behind the law enforcement officers in Trinidad and Tobago, because to do otherwise is to experience a worsening situation. Whose benefit will that be? Who would benefit? And who seems to be happy to announce with glee that the government doesn't know what it's doing and that the murders continue, and they can't hide the glee? Because what did you expect, ladies and gentlemen? What did they really expect? When they said police officers, all of them that I met, full room of people yesterday, they asked the government to give them certain resources. One of the resources they asked the government for was legislative. And yesterday when I met with the police officers, as I've done before, because as chairman of National Security Council, I, not regularly or frequently, but off and on, I would meet, as I've done before under different commissioners of police, meet with the divisional heads. We used to have 9 divisions, we now have 10. Meet with the divisional heads to find out how things are going in the area, what they see as their impediment, what more can the government do within reason to assist them in the assignment that they have. I've done that. And yesterday, once again, those police officers were saying to me that what they would find most helpful is a return to the use of the restriction for bail, where people who conduct themselves going through a revolving door with firearms, you do crime, you're known to have done it, you love firearms, you commit heinous crimes, you come back out on the street and you threaten, or you organize and you back in and you back out and you back in. They told me yesterday that the Bail Act will be and had been a great relief to them in the fight against the recidivists, those who go in and out, doing the same thing over and over. But the opposition has said very clearly, unless they are in office, they will have nothing to do with the restriction on bail in this country. That was their position. We went to the parliament. As a matter of fact, I could tell you, I just mentioned to you my long service in the parliament. And I'd served 15 years in the opposition. But while in the opposition, we took part, not me, we, the PNM, took part in serious decision-making in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. When the bail bill had to be extended, we were in the opposition. We supported it. Didn't matter that another party was in government, but for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we did that. As I speak to you now, I am the only opposition leader fresh in the job. I voted for the budget brought by the UNC. In 2015, I led my team to vote for the budget. In 2010, sorry, we were in opposition, 2010. Because we wanted the government to succeed. And there were many aspects in the budget prepared largely by the outgoing government that was beneficial to the people. And we cast a vote in support of, even as we pointed out, where there were shortcomings that we didn't agree with. But of course, you have people in office today, 19 of them, who have taken the position that they will support nothing that the government brings to the parliament. When we went into the opposition, the Anti-Gang Act was in committee in the parliament because the police had said they need, and we agreed in the parliament that this gang culture had to be legislated against and the police had to be empowered and the laws had to be strengthened so that you could deal with those who have made criminality by way of gangs to pay a price and to not prey upon the country. That law was in committee. The bill was in committee. The bill was in committee. It had to be worked upon to be brought for a vote in the parliament. Our members in that committee, I recall, one was the minister, who is now the Minister of Finance, the member for Diego Martin Northeast, and the Port of Spain South. So cooperative were they with the government that when the bill came to the parliament to be voted upon, and it was voted upon, the then Prime Minister identified and congratulated Mr. Imbert and Marlene MacDonald for the work that they had done in the committee to bring it, to allow the government to bring it for a vote, and we voted for it. That was a PNM opposition. But that is what happens when you have a real opposition in any country. Recently, a Jamaican minister said that they are going to, here's the minister saying they are going to be changing the law to make it less attractive for criminals to handle firearms illegally. And that if you are found with a firearm without permission and without the appropriate license, you get 15 years in jail or something like that. Minimum sentence. He could say that in Jamaica because he could rely on the opposition in Jamaica to support the government in the public interest in Jamaica. I can't say that in Trinidad and Tobago. I cannot say that. Because whether it supports the public interest or not, those who are on the other side, all they are concerned about is election and hoping that election will come and that you will put them in office, and for some reason they think that will somehow change the circumstance. So without advancing one single useful idea, call the election now, call the election now. That's all. That's all they have. And of course, sometimes somebody says, Don't you have alternative programs to offer the government? Oh, yes, they do. You know what the opposition's alternative program is? Divide the Ministry of National Security into two. Copy the American cabinet system and create a Ministry of Homeland Security and a Ministry of Defense. That is now put on the table after state of emergency, limited state of emergency, whole state of emergency, and 7 ministers of national security. That is what the opposition is saying will fight crime in Trinidad and Tobago. Because they've already practiced the state of emergency. They've already locked up thousands of people without evidence. That didn't change it. They've already practiced with a large number of ministers. That didn't change it. So the only change to be made now, according to the list of things that they're offering, is to divide the Ministry of National Security into two. Countries that have Ministry of Defense are countries that expect or put themselves in a position to fight an external force that may come to them as a military force. Or they are engaged in war, something like that. What is Trinidad and Tobago doing with a Ministry of Defense? But that is the same nonsense mouth that made the same nonsense statement that said we don't need offshore patrol vessels to keep intruders from coming to us and bringing to us whores and guns, because all we need to do is to fight crime on the streets in Belmont, not out in the ocean. So the latest thing now is they have a plan, and the plan is 2 ministries. But I can tell you that will do absolutely nothing to change the behavior and the intention of our homegrown criminal element that has put us today in a position where, with the best effort of our police service, we have 500 murders in Trinidad and Tobago. That's what it is. So we in the PNM government, we know legislative effort. We can't count on the opposition once it requires more than a simple majority. Because they will use that position as they've done, as they say they will do, as they've done for the last 7 years, which is to say no to making any change which the government requires. So the bail bill was good when they were in office. The anti-gang was good when they were in office. The minute they lose office. But it wasn't only about the bail bill, it's an attitude. We were in the opposition. We voted and supported them to bring the Caribbean Court of Justice to Port of Spain. It is headquartered in Trinidad. And then they said, we're not supporting it. So the absence of support for what might be good for this country or even for the region cannot be expected from people who are only concerned about personal office. I mentioned Tobago. I go there from time to time. I use my time there, especially late at night. But one of the things I do, I read a lot. Maybe it's because I want my 73-year-old brain to stay alive and sharp. And I want to quote something for you here that was published recently by an author called Mark Polymeropoulos. Let me read it for you people. It says, a leader who is preoccupied with his or her standing in an organization is not an actual leader. When people attend to concerns over their job security, they cannot attend to the key leadership principle, which is doing the right thing every time with courage and conviction. And Mark goes on to say, you put principles, if you're going to be a leader, who does that? You've got to put principles and country far above one's own interests. And he goes on to say, one has to take actions one may have to and will have to take actions that could cause political downfall, but would also protect that which one cares most about, country. And he goes on to say, sometimes one may have to sacrifice oneself for the good of the country. What you people in Trinidad and Tobago have to ask yourself today, are your leaders prepared to do that? Are you seeing that from your leaders? And if the answer is yes, then you know that high standards are being met. And if the answer is no, then you would know what to do. I would like to believe that in the PNM, our leaders have always put country first. And when a leader in this country says it's party first, you know exactly what you're getting. And therefore, don't be surprised at any of it. So, you will hear the screams of the banshee that nothing is happening with respect to fighting crime. The government has no... I will tell you, a lot is happening. What frightens me is what would the number have been had we not been doing what we have been doing. Because people, fellow citizens, those 500 people are not suicides, you know. They were killed by other people. The killers are called murderers. They are out there. They are out there in families. They are out there among friends. They are in spaces that every one of us use and share. Who are these people? Who is protecting them? Who is defending them? Who is nurturing them? And worse, it may not be 500 murderers, each one killing one person, you know. Some of those are killing many people. That's why they call it a walk. You choose to go out and mix cement. You choose to go and teach school. There are people in our society who choose to kill people as a walk. Do they have family? Do they have friends? Do their friends know what they're engaged in? Would their friends tell the police what they're doing? Day after day, morning after morning, it's the same news. More pain, more blood. And all the opposition can tell me is we hear the Prime Minister saying nothing about people being killed. What can I say about people who have been killed except that the government has committed and is providing all the resources as far as we are able to as far as the police is able to stop it before it happens or to find the perpetrators after. Let me give you an idea of what we're dealing with. 2018, firearms seized by the police. I want you all to wrap this around your head as to what our society is. Firearms, illegal firearms seized by the police. 2018, 988. 2019, 888. 2020, 755. 2021, 681. 2022, 576. So in 60 months, the police in this country, many occasions putting lives of officers at risk, have seized 3,800 188 firearms in this country. And even after that, we still have 500 murders in the last 10 months. What would have happened had the police not seized this quantum of arms and this quantum of ammunition in the country? And there's a point of view that there should be more of them out there, because unbeknownst to the government, the policy was changed that the way to deal with this is to arm the whole country. Give everybody a gun so you could shoot yourself into defense away from the criminal who come to shoot you. So get as many people. Women should have guns. So you with a gun in your handbag, you feel safe against a person who will choose when they will attack you and choose when to attack you when you are most vulnerable. And of course, what does the record show? The record shows that countries with a proliferation of firearms in the society have the most gun crimes in the world. The best example is the United States. Every day, every election, their main issue is how to handle arms and ammunition in their population, because some people believe, and the numbers show, that they've overarmed themselves at the personal level. Japan doesn't have that problem. The UK, the very UK that give us instructions here as to how to deal with criminals after they're convicted for murder or murders, they don't have a problem with handguns there. And now we move from handguns to assault weapons. 309 in that same 60-month period. As a matter of fact, I will say no more tonight, because there are people who are moving heaven and earth to prevent you from knowing the facts of how the police service had lost its way in the last recent past and have so provided a proliferation of arms and ammunition in this country that is, what I say again, is worrisome. Ladies and gentlemen, we will continue to do what has to be done. One of the things that the police told me yesterday when I asked them, what can the government do additionally to help you with what you have to do as police officers? A number of the divisional heads point to the fact that the use of cameras in the society would greatly help in identifying those who have chosen crime and criminality as a way of life. We were able to tell them, well, we are on that track, because the government has just spent $80 million to provide 2,500 cameras at various locations across this country, and they are being installed as I speak to you now. And the intention is to buy another 2,500. That means there'll be 5,000 public cameras and public spaces and select places in this country which are operated and owned by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. But we're going further than that. We are saying, I've had discussions before with the Minister of Finance, and he will operationalize it, where we are going to make not only tax-free, but for the next 12 months, from whenever the Minister of Finance does it for a 12-month period, we will give a tax uplift, a tax break. So if you spend $100, we'll make it $100 plus as a tax break for the corporate sector and for individual homes or individuals to put cameras in and around your households in this country. Because these criminals, they have to come out from the hole and they have to move. And when they do that, these cameras, the police will use these movements and these records to assist in the fight against crime in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's very important. Now, I did ask them also in the question of what can we do further? How can we help? And as they spoke to us yesterday in that long meeting, Many of them said that one of the problems they're having is the slow pace at which the criminal prosecutions are dealt with in Trinidad and Tobago. That isn't a new complaint. I'm sure our friends on the other side will make you believe that is something new. Not something new at all. But it is being identified as one of the problems, and it wasn't identified yesterday. The big problem with the opposition leader is that how come I could have called the meeting for Tuesday and called the meeting last week? Why wasn't the meeting held last week? Big noise about that. As if that is a point. That's called planning. We plan to have a meeting on Tuesday. And we also plan to deal, even though I was hearing yesterday from the police, that this whole question of this slow pace of how the criminal justice system is functioning, we had already heard that and we had taken some significant action. What was the action we took? Many of you would have forgotten by now, because when you look at the beautiful Red House now, that building of which we're all proud, you would have forgotten the number of years it was there, covered in scaffolding, leaking in every corner, and the parliament was bouncing all around like Miss Howard Cat didn't know what to meet. This government, the last administration which I led, took a decision, one, that we will renovate the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and move the People's Parliament into the Red House. We've done that. And having done that, we freed up the space down at the waterfront. And what did we do with it? In keeping with what the police told us yesterday, we have already taken action. We spent $90-odd million to prepare for civil courts to no longer meet in the Hall of Justice. But as I speak to you now, there are 16 courts operating down at the waterfront where the Parliament used to be, and we are having many more as we go on different floors in that building. All the civil court matters are now in that building down at Tower D on the waterfront. What does that mean for criminals? It means that every court in the Hall of Justice is now a criminal court. And there's a whole criminal division now, which is now based, all of it at the Red House. It means with the increased number of judges that we have made available, increased number of masters, increased number of court sitting, it means that the judiciary now has the ability to treat with more matters in a shorter space of time. That is one of the things that we are solving. And of course, at the end of the day, whether it happens or it doesn't happen, everybody looks to the government, as they should, to get it done. And the government is blamed when it is not done. But in this matter of dispensing of justice, you would have heard how the Prime Minister and the Cabinet must stay far from the Commissioner of Police and the police. Because once a matter gets to the police, the government has no role there. The police acts independently of the government, of the Cabinet, of the Minister. The Justice Department, the judiciary, once a matter goes to the court, the government has no role there. But all the government is required to do is to support these arms of state, provide them with the resources. And of course, as you know, just like you could never have enough money to do all the things you want to do, but we do provide all reasonable support. And this particular administration, focusing on responding to the criminal element, which wants to, as one newspaper put it the other day, wants to overwhelm the police service, we ensure that the government continues to provide more and more resources. I read a document today of the work that is going on in the judiciary with respect to using technology, digital technology, and the effect it is having on services provided by the judiciary. And I'm very pleased because this is the government that is encouraging the country to use technology, digitize the public service, and of course, COVID pushed those who didn't want to move. And we've seen the benefits, and we'll continue so to do. And of course, as we do that, I am not aware that you are aware of the scale of the assignment. In the text, it says that we are litigious people. It means we like courthouse. Not only for politics, we like courthouse. 60,000 cases filed every year. Did you know that? Did you all know that? In a population of 1.4 million people, 60,000 cases. And what is more troublesome? Do you know how many people we have in the jail for murder, awaiting trial? It's 1,186. 1,186 people are in jail awaiting trial for murder. And of course, it's not cheap. In some matters, one judge doesn't deal with it. And in many instances, it's a series of levels. We have taken significant steps to accelerate the rate of processing, but the rate of production is keeping pace. And there's no magic wand or no election result from failed quarters that will improve that. You will hear any amount of bad mouthing of the Minister of National Security and demand for his removal. They thought that by removing a minister every 6 months that you're fighting crime. The criminals love that. Because anybody will tell you, when you move from one ministry to the other, it takes a while to get a hold of that ministry. And every time a new minister comes in, it's a disruption of the process. What we have done is stay on the job, stay focused, and working item after item after item, improving the public response to the criminal element. And it's not just the violent crime in its final form, you know. In 2018-2019, there were 5,546 cases taken to the family court. 2020, that jumped to 10,700. But even so, we are taking steps to ensure that the family court is functioning. Over 700 of those over 7,000 of those matters have been dispensed with. So that chorus of people who telling you nothing happened, nothing happened, nothing happened, they will not want you to know that something is happening. That doesn't mean that the problem is solved, but we are in a better place now than when we started out. And you have to be in that frame of mind to want to stay the course and to travel the course and to not be misled by people, many of whom have already attracted at the personal level the attention of the police, the very police is talking about. I can tell you one thing. The one thing that the opposition leader stands out for is for leading a group of people, many of whom are of interest to the police, and quite a significant number of them have already been charged and they are in line to go in the same courthouse. but behaving as though crime is only murder. The murders are the end of all kinds of socio and economic conditions which this government has been responding to. Some will tell you crime is the outcome of poverty. Yes, poverty could instill actions of crime from time to time. But if you take the position that crime is related to poverty, then what about all those people who experience deficiencies and did not themselves become murderers? And what about those who use their intellect and their time and their physical strength to prey on others and has nothing to do with poverty? It has to do with a choice of living off the proceeds of high-paying criminal activity. Ladies and gentlemen, all of us can't spend all of our time being beaten down and misled by the criminal element. A significant amount of our resource is spent on providing safety and security. A significant amount of our time is spent focused on caring for those who are at risk in the areas where the criminals live, recruit, or hurt people. And we cannot, for 1 minute, take the position that we will politicize crime and not give the criminal element the upper hand of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Those who see political opportunity in the criminals overcoming the society, they don't have this country's interests at heart. Because if you, with a straight face, could tell me that when you were in office, the use of the bail bill, every year you came to renew it, every year, and you got opposition support. But never 1 year in 6 years will you agree to even modify it. You want no part of it. All of a sudden, the argument is you can't deprive people of their God-given right given to them under the Constitution. As if there was no Constitution when you were taking it away. Yeah? And you who, when you had a crime problem and you were in government to make the decision, you came out and just laplash, lock up thousands of people, deprive them of their rights, throw them in jail. And today, they're going to the court and getting hundreds of thousands of dollars because you arrested them and deprived them of their rights. But today you are a big talker about rights, and you can't bring yourself to vote, to use a law that you used when you were in government and always on platform talking about crime. I say tonight that the UNC is happy that the crime is the way it is because they see political benefit. And they believe that they have succeeded because they worked at it, obstructing everything that the government tried to do. And what kind of outcome did you expect? Did you expect that the crime would go with the hurricane? It would blow away with the wind? If you give the criminal an inch, they take a mile. If you give them support, if you behave as though the institutions of state are to be criticized as they do without reason, badmouth everybody, no respect for anybody, and provide support and promote them even as candidates. And even when they're on $1 million bail, they could sit aside of you in the parliament and not remove them from the office that they hold. Tonight, I tell you as a PNM leader, nobody who is on a criminal charge could hold a position of leadership in the PNM without responding to that charge. So on one side of the mouth, they make a great defense for crime and criminality, trying to make you believe that it's all about murder. It's not only about murder. Murder is one crime. White-collar crime. You see them spending time up and down. I mean, the last 3 weeks, you would have heard them up and down. You would think, oh, the government going to collapse and the country going to collapse because a case collapsed in the courthouse. And all those who had to say something about that, I ask you tonight here in Chaguanas, in those conversations, all of a sudden, the paramount thing there is about the failure somewhere in the process in going after white-collar criminals. Not the crooks who thief the money. Not that there's a conviction recorded in our court and that persons have put testimony which remains unchallenged and unresiled from. And they go on to talk about, I saw in an editorial, questions being put to me as Prime Minister about the role of the Prime Minister in this matter with Nelson. I don't know why they keep wasting their time. I could tell you without fear of contradiction, nothing to do with that matter has ever come before the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. Nothing. And that is normal because the cabinet does not get involved in matters of that nature in the judiciary. And I will tell them something else too. In a PNM government, the government does not advise the Attorney General on law. The Attorney General advises the cabinet on law. But what they're trying to do with all this noise and smoke and heat for who has heat to take is to try to discourage the government from pursuing white-collar crime in this country. And we focus only on the important business of murders. We believe that the murders and the murderers are part of the criminal assignment and would get the full attention of the state. But we also believe that those who have committed white-collar crime must also face the full brunt of the state. I'm talking from my office of the Prime Minister. I heard a lot being said about this wonderful discovery. You people need to know, because you were, sometimes I wonder how you make it, You need to know the facts. I've seen it being said on one particular matter that the Prime Minister is covering up for some persons who may or may not have questions to answer with respect to white-collar criminal conduct in a particular matter, the Clico matter. Because the Prime Minister did not lay the report, the Coleman report, in the Parliament. Let me remind you all, the Coleman report was the report that was prepared by Coleman, the inquirer, after that matter was dealt with on live television. You remember that? It was live on television. Cross-examination took place on television. We saw the people on television being made to answer questions. It took a long, long time. It cost $100 million. When the report came to me as Prime Minister, not because I asked for it, it's because it has to come to the Office of Prime Minister, where I happen to be the Prime Minister. I took the position that the report, after all that went on, including the live testimony and cross-examination, that it should be laid in the Parliament. I did that. I also sent a copy to other arms of the state, independent arms, that here is the report, the work has been done, here is the report. Before I could have laid that report in the Parliament, I received a letter from the Director of Public Prosecution telling me that I should not lay that report in Parliament because imminently charges are to be preferred against certain people, and if I lay the report in Parliament, it will damage that piece of work. The report to this day has not been laid in the Parliament, and I am being accused of covering up. I who have been instructed not to lay it for reasons given. And one of the voices that joined that conversation as if I have done something wrong, because they love to accuse me of things, right? Is an individual who has some questions to answer in there and decide that instead of answering the questions, they want you to vote for them to lead the PNM. But I leave that to you. I leave that to you. I have said to the people of Diego Martin West for years, I have been so proud to represent you. And the day you don't want me to represent you, I will thank you most sincerely for the opportunity you gave me, and I will wish you well with the choices that you have made. But I know there is one choice you are making. So, as we give resources to the police, as we create new courts, I tell you San Fernando, we're just spending $34 billion. Government took that building, Sisters of Clooney building in San Fernando. We're spending $34 million converting it into a family court in San Fernando. It will be open by June. Family court. That's what the government can do. The government can't come out there and see a man walking on the pavement and say, that is the fellow going to commit the next murder. Grab him. But the government can provide the infrastructure in the country in which families can come and get attention and assistance, sometimes separating each other from one another's throats. How many of those murders are family murders? And sometimes children are involved in it. So I want you to not give the government a pass in a situation where we all have to face up to the fact that 500 people have been killed for the year already. But I want you to identify that there are separate responsibilities for all of us. And when I say all of us, I mean all of us. Because one of the problems we have in this country is taking responsibility for what our responsibility is. I'll say no about that. I'll say no more about that. But we also have to acknowledge that circumstances change. The world has changed upon us. a lot of criminal conduct is managed from a cell phone, which allows certain amount of management that was never even contemplated 10 years ago. And the police and all the security services have to rise to those challenges. Not say, well, that's how we used to do it, and that's how it is done, and therefore we get the result. You have to rise to the occasion. And people have to know that if they do well on the job, they can be advanced for good performance. And if they don't do well, then you can't just run to the court and say, it's my turn now. We have some horrendous management models in Trinidad and Tobago that cannot turn out the kinds of outturn that we want. And in many instances, we are locked in there. And even if the parliament wants to change it, you have parliamentarians holding the country to ransom with their vote in the parliament. And when they have nothing to offer, they resort to lies, naked lies, hoping that you will believe it. You know, I was shocked yesterday, not yesterday, a couple of days ago, when I heard the member for Orapuch on the national news talking with authority that he has been advised that the Prime Minister is missing in action because I went to Tobago. And as a result of the Prime Minister not going to office and not doing his work, files have piled up in the Prime Minister's office from ground to the ceiling. That's a parliamentarian. That is a parliamentarian. People of the PNM in Chaguanas and people of Trinidad and Tobago, I could tell you now without fear of contradiction, there is not a single unattended file older than 24 hours on any desk of mine in any of my office. But on the contrary, when I became Prime Minister on September 9, 2015, and I went to that office in St. Clair, I had to be approving files from 2013, 14, and 15 about things long before I was Prime Minister, but the law requires that the Prime Minister has to sign it, so I was signing not knowing whether I was giving away my children's heritage. Because they were lying there since 2013. Matters, some complex, some simple. Somebody acted in 2013, could not be paid because the file is still on the Prime Minister's desk. And I have to listen to people now lying that their files. Call my office. I authorize you to call the office and ask them what files you have in Whitehall or any other office where I am supposed to be working. So if you don't have truth to tell you and you want to say something, you have to lie. But when you hear the leader of the opposition in your country saying that when Parliament meets, there is this big crowd of security cars that clog up the Parliament streets around Parliament because all ministers have security. Lie. The Prime Minister has, like every other Prime Minister, has a detail that goes to the Prime Minister. The Attorney General and the Minister of National Security. Those are the three ministers I know. One particular situation of a previous Minister of National Security may still have a detail, having come out of that situation. But I am not aware that other ministers in the cabinet have security in this government. But I'm sure you can recall the time when half of the Trinidad and Tobago cabinet was driving around with blue light and making noise and siren in the road. That's what they did, you know. I'm coming now, and you expect a certain behavior from the opposition leader. But again, if you have nothing useful to say, and you want to impress the people that the circumstances are bad, you resort to stories like that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not going to improve our circumstance without sacrifice and without adherence to the motto. You know, we are required to produce. This government has now come out of it, and we're still in it. The Minister of Finance would have told you a while ago that things have improved a bit. The one thing we have to be careful with is not to get carried away with that good news that the Minister of Finance is able to, because it's good news that we are in a better position. But some people believe that it is only as a result of what happened in the Ukraine war and the oil price rise. But let me take you back. It didn't happen by happenstance. A lot of the good fortune that he's reporting in dollars and cents happened as a result that you had a government in office that set about to make certain changes. And the changes we made that bear fruit for us today are changes that we decided to go and negotiate and renegotiate with the oil companies and the gas companies. And when we said that we were going to do that, those who were politically opposed to us or intellectually better than us, according to them, had criticized us for taking that approach, saying that we will be chasing foreign exchange from the country and that these things are in contracts and they cannot be renegotiated. We did not take their advice. I could tell you, as you may already know, I led this government's team around the world to where the decision making was done and we got changes made. And let me tell you what the benefit of some of those changes were. Or we didn't cancel a single contract. We didn't abandon a single contract. We spoke to those who were contracted in Trinidad and Tobago. And we made the case and made it so convincingly that we got agreement on certain changes. So as a result of that, there's something called enhanced revenue, meaning a better stream of revenue, better than what existed before. Enhanced revenue, which we would not have gotten had we not renegotiated as we did early in our term and did so successfully. As a result of that, between August 2019 and the second quarter of 2022, we received from Shell alone, of the monies mentioned by the Minister of Finance as enhanced revenue, we received $4 billion. And in terms of changing the tax regime to put a royalty regime in place, which does not get stuck to be paid by NGC, but paid by the others, we got between 2017 and 2022 under royalty $7.85 billion for a total of $11,860 million. That is money which would not have been available had we not made the changes that were made as a result of the new negotiations that we had successfully completed. And I want you to bear that in mind. Had your government not stayed the course, identified the pathway, and successfully concluded these new arrangements for enhanced revenue, we would have been $11.86 billion poorer. And the Minister of Finance would have been telling you a different story tonight. It's that high because the oil prices are high, the gas prices are good. But they all move up and down the same way. But in terms of getting an enhanced revenue, whether it is high oil price or low oil price, getting an enhanced version, That is one of the most important things that was ever done by the government that you elected and put in place, and leave the jokers behind to talk about who this and who that and who the other, talking about personalities. They could talk about personalities. They can't talk about policies and programs, because much of what we are doing now could have been done before. Today I was driving past in Port of Spain, and I looked across the savannah, across Memorial Park, and it gladdened my heart when I saw the steel frames going up in the air for the new 500-odd bed hospital in the new block in the hospital, a building that was condemned in 2009, which only now is being dealt with, because we pulled down the old building that was condemned, and we are building a new hospital block there now, and it's going up floor by floor. And very early in the new year, the Ministry of Health will move out of rental premises, where we spend millions in rent, into the new Ministry of Health headquarters, which is on Queen's Park East, and I pass there every day and see them building it. It's going to be ready early in 2023. We have come into office to solve problems, and we have been solving those problems, and in fact, in some instances, we were prepared to sacrifice our political selves for the country of Trinidad and Tobago. So when some party member who have not passed anywhere near that part of Port of Spain pass around there now, and they see Balize House, as you know it, being fully renovated, and they see a new party headquarters being built, rather than say, I will come into office and complete that, you want to know where the PNM getting money from to do that. Clearly, when we raffled 15 cars over a 3-year period and raised money to start that project and to keep it going, you didn't even buy a ticket. If you didn't even know we were doing that, you wasn't a part of this crowd. And if you have a problem with the party having a headquarters, then you're better off being with parties that moving all around the country on top of rum shop, on top of bar. You're better off there, stay there. Because tonight, I want to call on all party members, wherever you are, whoever you're voting for in this election, I want you to pledge a financial contribution to your party, which we are at the roof stage now. And as soon as this internal election is over on December 4th, I expect to be your leader. And from the 5th of December, our next program is to come to you on an individual membership basis to make your contribution from $1 to $1 million to finish that building and to stand proud with this party. Because if for 60-odd years, if for 62 years, what Dr. Williams gave us took us here, we have to build for the next 100 years for those who will come. And when we come to you to ask for your contribution, as we've done before, you will know that you're supporting the worthiest of causes, building an institution not just in name or by number, but the physical presence in the city of Port of Spain of a party headquarters of which we can all be proud, and put your contribution there. So anybody come asking you, how are we doing that? Tell them it's we doing it. We are the PNM. It took us years to get there, but we are at the roof now. We are at the roof stage now. It took us years to get there. And with God's help and your help, we will complete in the year ahead, early in the year ahead, the new headquarters of the PNM. And I look forward to gathering in the courtyard there with you, gathering in the shadow of that fine building. And from the road to that building, from the yard of Balize House, we will all shout, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.
Somebody touch me, somebody touch me, somebody touch my soul. Yeah. Somebody praise to me, Jesus, somebody touch my soul.
Come on, Shogunas, we could do better than that. Let us give our political leader a round of applause. So again, to our party membership on the 26th, 26th and 27th of November and the 4th of December, go out in your numbers and you support the candidate of your choice in the upcoming election. That is your democratic right. To you, Trinidad and Tobago, you have heard from the platform of truth. We ask you to all get home safely and soundly to your respective homes. And we thank you for sharing with the People's National Movement in our platform of truth. Thank you.
Somebody touch me. Remember the days of toting water, anytime that you have to pay. Or when people pass and they see you, oh my Lord, used to feel that shame. Wondering if this lasts forever, wondering when.
The preceding program was a paid political broadcast.
This is TTT. Live for local.
My name is Renako Alexander Waltran. I was assigned to IGovTT. Subsequent to the OJT program, I was